In this video, we're going to take a look at one of the most versatile types of lights in 3ds Max, which is the spotlight. With its ability to strategically point its light toward a specific area within a scene, spotlights offer an added level of control that you don't get when using an OmniLight. To show you how things work, I'll again be using the Floor and Walls file that can be found in the Working Files folder for this chapter. In a previous video, I described a spotlight as behaving similar to the way a flashlight works. It's light traveling only in the direction that the light is pointed. What makes a spot even more like a flashlight is the fact that you can actually control just how far to the sides its light spreads. Let's get over to the Lights tab in the Command panel, and we'll drop one in our scene. Now, you'll remember that Max offers two types of spotlights, one called a target and one known as a free. The difference between the two being the handle or movable control at the opposite end of the target light. That handle usually comes in handy, so let's create a target spot in the top view. I'll start the light at the lower right-hand corner of the floor, heading up diagonally to where the walls come together. So we can get a better take on what we're working with, let's go ahead and activate both the Illuminate with Scene Lights option and the Active Shade. We'll start with the viewport lighting. Up at the top left corner of the perspective view, click on Realistic. From there, drop down to Lighting and Shadows, then to the right choose Illuminate with Scene Lights. For the Active Shade option, we'll this time click on the name Perspective. 3/4 of the way down the menu, we'll choose Extended Viewports, then Active Shade. Now, why do you think it is that very little light is hitting the floor? Well, check out the front view. Target spots, when created, lay flat in the window in which they're made. And that translates to mean that the light is currently laying parallel to the floor. Surfaces that are best lit by a particular light are the ones positioned perpendicular to that light source. In other words, sitting at a 90-degree angle to the light. So to light the floor, we'll need to move the spot up off the floor. Let's do that in the front view. Activating the Move command, then moving the light up to the upper right-hand corner. Look at the difference that's made. Now, a target light, as previously mentioned, always points in the direction of its target. You can see that as we move the light around. Up in the top view, let's move the light to the left-hand side of the scene. Let's also take it to the right-hand side of the floor. Then we can move it back to its original location. Having that handle at the other end allows you to also control it, positioning the target where you want the light to specifically illuminate. In our front view, let's select the target on the light, moving it halfway up the wall. In the top view, let's reposition the target so it's pointing directly at the left-hand wall. Let's also have it pointing toward the middle of the right-hand wall. You can see that as we move the target, the light stays where it is, rotating in the direction of that target's location. Let's go ahead and take the target back to where the walls meet down at the bottom of the floor. You can also move both ends of the light together, which you'll do for an example when your light needs to be repositioned to a completely different area of the scene, maybe taking it upstairs or into the next room over. To select both the light and its target, you'll simply click on the line that connects the two together. Once you've done that, you can move both ends of the light simultaneously. I'll again take things back to where they started. Now, let's deselect the light for just a moment. When you do, you lose the visual display of what is referred to as the light's cone, which is basically your graphical representation as to how far to the sides the light is shining. There's an option that we can turn on to keep the cone of the light visible even when the light is not selected. Let's reselect the light, then over in the Modify column, we'll head down to the Spotlight Parameter section. In there, under Light Cone, you'll activate Show Cone. If we now deselect the light, you'll see that the cone remains visible. Okay, let's take a look at some of the spotlight settings. In addition to pretty much the same controls that you'll find when using an OmniLight, you also have control over the light's spread from side to side. That can be found under Spotlight Parameters, with a pair of settings called Hotspot and Falloff, sometimes known as the light's beam and field values. These control not just how far to the sides the light shines, but also the strength of that shine as it pertains to how crisp or how feathered the edge of the light is. To show you how this works, let's convert one of our views so we can display a visual representation of what areas of the scene the light is actually illuminating. In our front view, we'll click on the name Front, then go to Lights, then Spot 001. This converts the view to a spotlight viewport. You could have also used the shortcut, Shift-4. It's the $ on the keyboard. The two rings that you see represent the spotlight's hotspot and falloff ranges. The inside ring is the light's hotspot, which identifies the area of the light where its intensity or strength remains at 100%. So whatever the light's multiplier is set to, in the hotspot region, that multiplier level stays at 100% strength. The outside ring is the light's falloff, which controls just how far to the sides the light shines. Anything outside the falloff ring won't be lit or illuminated by that light. It's the relationship or spacing of the two rings that then controls how sharp the light's edge is. When the hotspot and falloff are close together, like we have now, you get a sharp or crisp edge to the light. Adjusting the rings so they're farther apart softens that edge. The farther the distance between the two rings, the more the edge of light will diffuse or soften up. Back on the right, let's change the hotspot value to 30. In the spotlight viewport, you'll notice how the inner ring has gotten smaller, and in doing so has softened the edge of the light. We can see that softening effect even further by dropping the hotspot to 15. So the bigger the difference is between the size of the two rings, the softer the edge of the light will be. Now to widen the light's coverage, we can increase the falloff. Let's take that to 60. To spread even further still, we'll take the value to 70. Then, to make the middle of the light area a little brighter, we'll take the hotspot to 25. If the spotlight viewport is active, you can also adjust those two ranges using a couple of different icons in the lower right-hand corner. On the top row, you have a control for the light's hotspot. In the spotlight viewport, you can interactively adjust that larger or smaller. Down on the bottom row of icons, you have a control for the falloff. This works pretty much the same way, but this time around controls the outer ring. Let's change our spotlight viewport back to a front view by typing F. Now, the hotspot and falloff ranges can also be interactively controlled directly inside the views using what is called the Select and Manipulate tool up on the toolbar. To show you how that works, let's first turn off our active shade. Then, up on the toolbar, we'll activate Select and Manipulate. This now gives us direct control over both the hotspot and falloff ranges in any of our views. I'm going to go ahead and work in the lower left-hand window. So either way you go, you've got plenty of choices on being able to control the hotspot and falloff ranges. Now, as far as shadows on the spotlight, let's go ahead and unhide a few things so we'll have something in our scene. Right-clicking in the view, in the upper right-hand menu, I'll choose Unhide All. Now, just like we saw when working with the OmniLight, spots don't cast shadows unless instructed to do so. Let's go ahead and turn those on. We could work in the Modify column on the right, but let's instead simply right-click on the head of the light. From here, in the upper left-hand side menu, we'll turn on Cast Shadows. If we now move our spotlight around, you'll see how the shadows automatically update as far as their position. Let's do that in an active shade so we can get a more accurate representation of what's happening. All the time, we could go back in adjusting either our hotspot or falloff ranges. Okay, that'll do it for the spot. Now, next time one of your projects needs a light source that can be strategically pointed into a specific area of your scene, choose a spotlight to get the job done.